So thank you for using these as a resource to help you. All right, so tonight, episode 38, we are dealing with understanding teen culture. Understanding teen culture. And I'm going to give you some practical ways to stay up to date with the teen youth culture. I hear all the time, man, people say things like, man, I don't even know, everything changes, trends change. Right when I think I have an understanding of students, then it's like everything flips, right? So we're going to try to get a handle on that and show you some real creative ways to stay up with the youth culture. All right, so text that friend. Here we go. Youthology Live, 12 minutes of learning, understanding the youth culture. So let me read some statistics and just take you through something. You know that I give you a resource. This is My Broken Palace. It was a pamphlet put out by Book of Hope. And if you would like to order it, you can go on to mybrokenpalace.com. It is one of my favorites when we talk about teen culture. And it is written from the standpoint of teenagers and their stories. The teenagers actually wrote the stories of the things that they were struggling with. And so I'm going to pick it up and read some statistics to you and help you understand the youth culture and where we're at today. Overworked. 64% of teens lose sleep over having too much to do. 39% feel pressured to do more. No one knows for sure how many teens are bullied because so many incidents go unreported. Research does suggest that as many as 77% of students in the U.S. have experienced physical, mental, verbal abuse before graduation. And you know that even on social media, there's the social abuse there also. Let me turn the corner here. Most teens with an eating disorder go untreated and continue to suffer with depression, a vicious cycle of sadness, pain, and self-hate. There is hope, you know that, but we have to identify these signs that lead to eating disorders. Hopelessness defined. Let me go there, dealing with some of the triggers that take place in moving students along the line of bullying, addictions, and in this case, eating disorders. The third leading cause of death for people 15 to 24 years old, third leading cause of death is suicide. I think you realize that it actually has just bumped up into the second and in a tie for the second. So you can follow those off the Gen Z study that was done in 2018. As you are hearing these kind of statistics, some of you know that if you've talked to anyone who is struggling with depression, who is struggling with self-harm, right? And ultimately suicide, hope is huge because it turns the corner and gives them help tomorrow. I love when I'm talking to students who are dealing with suicide and hopelessness to say something like, hey, listen, let's talk for a few minutes, but I want to meet you tomorrow. Will you meet me at, right, and you get them a drink and spend some time with them and get them a donut and go for a walk with them, go to the beach or take them to a movie or whatever, right? Hope, keeping them focused on what's next is really a game changer in that situation. Here's another statistic. As we're understanding teen culture, it is estimated that as many as 1 in 200 teens self-injure. Okay, think about this. Teens involved in self-injury, cutting, etc., are also more likely to participate in risky sexual behavior, resulting in greater AIDS risks. Cutting is a destructive way to deal with some of these triggers and issues that we've talked about. Okay, here's another one. No one wakes up and decides to become addicted to a drug. Right? Think about that. Nobody just wakes up and says, I think I'll get addicted to nicotine, or my life is spiraling, I'm going to get addicted to drugs. No, oftentimes there are signs that we can see for days. There are signs that students will show and they'll exhibit and they'll manifest. We just have to be watching for those things. And in the blog, I'm going to lay out the triggers and the signs that students really, and oftentimes, they are flagging us, okay? Little psychological term, they are flagging us. So I'll write more of those triggers down so we don't have to deal with them here also, okay? Here's another one. Addictive substances trick your brain into thinking that you are feeling pressure, okay, while your body is really being poisoned. Not all addictions poison your body. Some poison your mind and your heart. It's an illusion, right? Drugs have just become an illusion. Here's one more, and we're going to go a different direction here. 15 million kids in the U.S. live in an abusive home. Over 15 million students in America, teenagers in America, live in an abusive home. 1 in 3 girls is a victim of physical, emotional, or verbal abuse by a boyfriend. We live in a society where violence seems to be the answer. It's like the only way I can solve things is to be aggressive, right? So what do we do? What do we do with those statistics? How do we handle? Where do we go to find help with these kind of issues and problems? I want to give you 2, all right? Now, if you go back in the blog, I blogged on a few months ago. If you just go into the blog and search under crisis, okay, counseling at risk. I blogged this before, but we're going to get into detail with this, with 2 ways to understand teen culture and understand some of the signs and see the flags that are taking place with teens. Because I'm sure you have been surprised before, right? Man, I never thought that kid would. That came out of left field. I never realized that student would go that far in doing that, right? So let me give you 2 signs. Number one sign in understanding teen culture and seeing the signs that lead to these abusive behaviors. Number 1 is time in student culture. Time in the student culture. Let me explain that. I want to give you 4 or 5 ways to get yourself into student culture, because sometimes we can separate ourselves and we really don't understand where they're coming from. So I want to give you 2 magazines. The first one's 17. That will, those of you that are familiar with that will understand where that's coming from with trends and clothing and styles and all of that. And then the second one is Teen Vogue, okay? Teen Vogue. Teen Vogue is a very progressive magazine, but I read it every month. I go through the articles, I see what they're writing about, and it's not a conservative magazine, but it's very informative, okay? Very informative. So Teen Vogue. MTV. Watch MTV every month. Take an hour out and look at some of the programming. Look at some of the hosts and the content at MTV. Listening to Top 40. Every time I'm in a rental car, I try to spend some time going through the stations because I'm in a different region, in a different place, just to understand what students are listening to, and to see what's pop, right? What's trendy in music. And that will really help tremendously for you to understand a little bit about their world and the kind of things that are being said over and over, repetition, right? And the license that there's so much license and freedom in the press that way. And then also social media, okay? Man, to just surf in social media and follow the students in your youth group and take a look at the threads and the things that are being said. Listen, I know we don't get our news there, and we don't get theology there, and we don't create our next series necessarily out of social media. But man, sometimes the more you can understand the language of the students and you can understand where they're coming from, then the easier it is for you to relate to them, okay? Let me give you this little concept when you're talking about this. There's a difference between being relative and relevant. Okay? Relevant is up to date, understanding. It's a good thing. This is why we're doing this cast. I want you to be relevant. And these things that we just mentioned, and many more that I'll put in the manuscript, I'm going to give you, just like last week we gave you 20. I'm going to give you 10 different formats and 10 different ideas for you to understand teen culture, aside from the 5 I just gave you. But that's being relevant, okay? Current. But there's another thing that's really important, that's relative. Because I don't want to just be current but not involved. Relating, relative. And a lot of us talk about being relevant, but I think being relative is way more important. Because now I can take those concepts, I can take that understanding, and I can apply that to a teenager's life. Okay? So, and that leads me to the second. So let me go with those 5 in time and student culture. 2 magazines, 17 and Teen Vogue, MTV, Top 40, and social media. That will get you going. And I'll give you 5 more also, okay, this week. I'll give you 5 more so you have plenty and plenty ways to understand student culture. All right, we're at 12 minutes, so let me get through this one here in just a couple of minutes and we'll lay this aside. So time and student culture. And the second one, in understanding the youth culture, is time with students themselves. When is the last time you cried for a teenager? When is the last time you heard the story of a teenager? You let a teenager tell their story and the things that they were going through. When is the last time you sat down and said, listen, tell me what's going on in your life? And not letting them get by with, hey man, I'm good, I'm okay, but actually spending time with them, okay? Some one-on-ones, where you sit down with a student and you get into their life and you go into their world and you spend time with them, quality time with them, asking questions and trying to figure out how did they get where they're at? What is their family background and their family story? What's their favorite subject, course in school? How's it going with their coach and the team? Are they getting playing time? What about who's their circle? Who's their squad? Who's their close friends? Okay? Listen, if we isolate ourselves from teenagers all week and then try to pop into the youth service on Wednesday or Friday or Sunday or whenever that is, but we've isolated ourselves all week from them, it's going to be very difficult for you to understand students. Okay? So we need one-on-ones with them. And then one more thing too, their peers. Talk to their peers. Talk to their friends. I mean, you're not creeping with their friends and you're not getting, the 411 or the skinny on them. But what you're doing is you're saying, you're finding out in that circle the kind of things they're talking about. Because a lot of stuff happens in teen culture in groups, in corrals. They get together in tribes and they do the same thing and they talk about the same thing. So I think that will really help you. So those 2 things. To understand students more, understanding teenagers. Number 1, time in student culture. And I give you all of that list of things, and I'll give you more in the manuscript. And number 2, time with students themselves. Okay, so time in student culture and time with students themselves. Hey, thank you for checking into this blog, this real quick post, this live here. You know what we do. I will break all this down, put some content to it, and it'll be up on YouTube sometime this evening or sometime on Monday of this week. And you'll be able to follow the manuscript, this week also, and use that in your content and your study and resourcing. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining us at 12 Minutes of Learning and Youthology Live.